on sciences and emerging technology for resilience building, UNESCO's approach for its just transition. My name is Abu Amani. I'm the director of the Division of Water Sciences at the UNESCO, and I'm honored to facilitate this first part of the opening ceremony. As you know, this side event, which we are organizing also with the United Nations University and also on IPCC, has the objective to explore the science and emerging technology in contributing to helping member states to mitigate and adapt to climate change through ethics, education, and sciences. And this is an opportunity for science to contribute to the addressing in a meaningful way the interconnected challenges of climate change. So without further ado, I'm pleased to invite Lydia Brito, the Assistant Director General for Natural Science, to provide her opening remarks. Lydia?
Thank you very much, and good morning. Welcome to this session of UNESCO and other partners. Allow me to start by recognizing the presence of my colleague, Gabriela Ramos. She's the Assistant Director General for Social Science. You can see the sciences in UNESCO are working together, and in particular in these topics where we need to have all the knowledge and all the efforts and the commitments and the energy to really address the challenges we are facing and that we are discussing in this COP28. So I want also to recognize the presence of Mr. Abdullah Moqsit, Secretary of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Thank you so very much for being with us. It's a great honor, and we know how busy you are, and being with us, it's really important. I want also to recognize Mrs. Yamakushi Sinobao, Director of the United Nations University Institute for Advanced Studies of Sustainability. And thank you again, Madam, for being with us today. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends. I'm delighted and honored to welcome you all on behalf of UNESCO to the session Sciences and Emerging Technologies for Resilience Building, UNESCO's approach for a just transition. The theme of this session resonates with the UNESCO core mandate to continue providing support to countries through science and technology and in capacity building for management of disasters and climate risks. In pursuit of its mandate in science, UNESCO is leading the preparatory process and the implementation of the UN International Decade of Science for Sustainable Development that will start in January next year, so very soon, January 2024 to December 2033. And as you can imagine, this is a huge, huge opportunity, 10 years, to really make sure that science and technology are at the service of sustainable development. But that means to reflect also how our science systems are organized, what kind of knowledge are we producing, how the different knowledge systems interact, and how can we make sure that that knowledge is assessed to decision makers. UNESCO has therefore implemented various activities and initiatives that leverage the sciences and emerging technologies to help member states mitigate and adapt to climate change through ethics, education, and the sciences. For instance, we see in the framework of its 9th strategic plan, the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, UNESCO supports the development and sharing of new technologies using Earth observation, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things by the scientific community and the service providers. Furthermore, and in line with UNESCO's recommendation on open science, UNESCO IHP seeks to ensure that these technologies are communicated and or used for strengthening capacity of water stakeholders to increase their use in hydrological planning and assessment, as well monitoring and distribution networks for resilience. Today's session will showcase UNESCO's key interventions in the context of science and emerging technologies for resilience building under conditions of climate change. In addition, UNESCO interventions through AI-supported climate stress testing and the definition of optimized climate change adaptation pathways under the framework of what we call CRIDA, Climate Risk Informed Decision Analysis, and applications of open and citizen science will be presented. This session will also highlight the importance of ethical frameworks and will showcase key interventions related to the World Commission of UNESCO on the ethics of scientific knowledge and technology, COMEST, building on its reflections on environmental ethics and following its reports on water ethics, ocean, freshwater, coastal areas published in 2018, and land use ethics in 2021, and I'm sure my colleague will talk about it much more. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to remind us that the rapid growth of science and technologies has been compounded with a call for open science to ensure that methodologies and tools can be openly shared and upscaled for climate risk management and building resilience. A framework to regulate sharing of science, including open science, was therefore an urgent necessity. And that's why, as a response to this urgency, UNESCO's recommendation on open science was adopted in 2021 by our General Conference. And this recommendation acknowledges that more open, transparent, collaborative, and inclusive science improves the quality, reproducibility, and impact of science, and thereby the reliability, sorry, my Portuguese is coming in, needed for robust decision making. And one of the aspects of the open science recommendation of UNESCO is that it's grounded on what we call the right to science. As you know, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on Article 27, it expressly says that all of us, all humans, have the right to the benefits of science. But what is more important for us in today's world is that everybody has the right to participate in the creation of knowledge for humanity best. And I think that's what the open science recommendation of UNESCO really is bringing to the table. And I think it's what we are all discussing these days in the COP28. It's how can each of us and all of us together really address through scientific endeavors, but also through indigenous knowledge, through local knowledge, and more than anything, this urgent action that I think all of us feel will make the difference for us and for the future generations. So considering also the momentum gained at the UN Water Conference held early this year, the ongoing efforts by UNESCO and partners, and the overarching theme of this session, I believe that outcomes of this session will contribute to the acceleration of the water action agenda and share best practices to set the milestone for ensuring resilience against climate risks through science and technology. And allow me just to make a comment, because yesterday we had a day-long session on water, and we were in the water pavilion. And we said we are glad that for the first time in COP there is a water pavilion, but we are very sad that water is still not part of the discussions and the negotiations. And it was very clear from the panels yesterday, the several panels we had, that in particular for adaptation, we need to put water at the center of the discussions and the commitments of the governments. And we need to put water science, as we are putting ocean sciences, at the center also of mitigating and adapting to climate change. With this, I want to thank you all for being here. A great pleasure to share this moment with you, and thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lydia, for these inspiring words. Before the panel discussion, we will have two keynote presentations. The first keynote presentations will be on climate engineering and governance, bringing ethics at the forefront, UNESCO's perspective. And that keynote will be delivered by our Assistant Director General, Gabriela Ramos. She is in charge of our social and human science at UNESCO. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, and great pleasure to be here with you, and of course, great pleasure to be with my dear colleague Lydia Brito. People make the difference. She just took over of this ADG. She has been, of course, a warrior on the science sector and the science at UNESCO for quite some time. But she took over as ADG Science in June, and this is the second event that we organize. So she has bring it all together. So thank you, Lydia. That's fantastic. Welcome to all of the participants. Mr. Mosquit, great to have you here. Ines, everybody. So it's great to have you. Let me then move into what it concerns us in terms of Lydia has provided with an overview of the very good work we're doing in natural sciences. In the social and human sciences, of course, we are looking at the societal impacts, at the community impact, at the knowledge that different communities can bring, but we're also very fond of the question of the ethics, the reflection of the ethical elements that we need to include on the climate discussions. We have a declaration on the ethics of climate change. I have been working on the economics for quite some time, for decades, and when I joined UNESCO 3 years ago, I was like, what does it has to do ethics of climate change? And when you look at that declaration, I will really, here with me is Adele Di Taranto, it's just about inclusiveness, it's just about fairness, it's just about a relationship with the planet and all of the things that we are discussing today. And we have applied this same perspective to the ethics of climate engineering, and I will get into that. But the framing of this discussion, of course, has to do with where we are now in the climate discussions. We hope that we will have a good outcome of Dubai. We're all crossing fingers that it will be done. But we know that we are really falling short in terms of delivering for the climate transition. We know that if we continue at the same pace, and I spoke under your control, we will have double the emissions in 2030 than where we need to be. We will not be anywhere near what was agreed in Paris. And therefore, I think that this sense of emergency and urgency to really take the decisions phasing out fossil fuels, it's really core to this. But then we also need to think about the social impacts, because when we decide on these very important agreements that have been put together by humanity, we always need to think about who bears the brunt of the decision that we take. We know that 1% increase in temperatures will create 9% increase in extreme poverty. We know that it will increase 1% on inequality on a world that is already so unequal and so facing all these social impacts. 132 million people risking becoming poor thanks to these very important impacts of climate change. I was struck by the report by Oxfam also, because it's not only about how you consider the distributional impact of climate policies, but also who is producing the problem. And this question of knowing that 1% of the top income earners have their footprint is the same as 2/3 of humanity. I think these things need to come up front when we discuss how do we distribute the impact and how do we ensure that we accompany those that are really having more hurdles to confront. And then, of course, how do we deliver for the climate agreement? And in this context, the Committee of the Ethics of Science and Technology, I'm here with the lead author of the report, Ines Calenoli, and we also have for the second part of the discussion, Sheikh Ndaj Silla, who was the Director, Ministerial Cabinet on the Environment of Senegal. They addressed the question of climate engineering. And why? Because climate engineering, meaning taking carbon out of the atmosphere, or doing some human interventions to control solar radiation, or getting the sea to have more plants to absorb the carbon are almost there, Ines, are almost there. It's not science fiction, they are here. I understand that carbon capture and storage is still very expensive, but the solar radiation modification technologies is not, and is at hand. And therefore, when we consider these possibilities, and knowing that we are not delivering on the trajectory that we need, of course people say, why not? Why not? Why don't we just use them? Why don't we deploy them? And I think that what UNESCO has been saying with the ethics discussion is that this is not a technological discussion. It's not about whether the technologies are ready or not, whether the world is ready and who's going to take the decision. Do we have complete knowledge of all the elements that are required for these decisions to take place? And Ines will be presenting some of the elements of the report that we released some weeks ago and that have been also reported in several media. The issues are pretty straightforward from the ethical perspective. First and foremost, have we measured all the risks? Do we have all of the elements? For example, just consider the solar radiation modification. It's pretty straightforward, no? You go and seed the clouds with some aerosols to create a membrane that will protect the Earth from the most damaging solar radiation. The question is this well calibrated? Is this going to work for everybody? What are the risks? And I don't think that we have all the answers, and therefore it's very risky. Because yes, you can produce the kind of interventions that look very forthcoming, but at the end, what if we overdo it? And what if we produce reactions in areas that then will become desertic? The other point is the question of inclusiveness. Who takes the decision? Is this for the countries that are able and equipped to develop the technologies to decide that they want to do it? Whether those that are facing higher temperatures, they will do it by themselves because they can do it, without considering that this is a global discussion and needs to be global. And therefore, one of the things that we are going to be doing at UNESCO is exactly producing the kind of spaces where people can come together and express their views on these very important issues. So the whole question is, how do we organize a global discussion that is not only about the global north, that is the ones that are well equipped with this technological progress, but how do we ensure that the discussion is inclusive, and how do we ensure actually that we address something that always happens with these developments, which is the asymmetry of knowledge and the asymmetry of power and the asymmetry of decision making. And I think this is super important. This is something that you have, Lydia, in the open science recommendation, because at the end, the world is for everybody, and therefore everybody has to have a say if we are going to get into these very complex decisions. We will be discussing this in the second part of the panel, but the whole point of emerging technologies, the whole point of how do we frame them and how do we ensure that they deliver for good for everybody is very important. And then the question of whether you get into the innovation, you stop the innovation or you don't stop the innovation. And I have to say that one of the highest risks that we are facing is that because these technologies seem to be at hand, closer, we will be facing more moral hazard. We are now listening to some of the discussions on the phasing in or phasing out, and some countries want to introduce phasing out of fossil fuels emissions. Because probably, yes, it's easier to, once you have emitted the emissions, to just recover them, and you don't have to worry. I think this moral hazard of using the technologies to change the climate as an excuse not to go for the mitigation commitments that we have and the adaptation and the financing, I think is the greatest risks, and we need to raise it very importantly in an inclusive way, as I said, in an ethical manner. So thank you for being here. Our role is to raise the visibility of these issues, bring it to all of you, and then decide how we want to handle it in an inclusive manner. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Gabriela, for outlining these main challenges related to climate engineering technologies. And we are looking forward for the discussion within the panel. But before the panel, as you sometimes it happens, we are lucky to have the IPCC secretary with us. He's very busy, as you know, but unfortunately he has to leave. But I want to give him the floor to intervene before my colleague Kuhn for the keynote. Abdullah, if you can have the statement before leaving. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Abu Amani, and I think I am really also honored to be here and to with Mrs. Lydia Brito, Gabriela Ramos, and I recognize Ines, I recognize my brother Anil. I think, just to tell you, when Anil told me, can you, before knowing what is requested, I told him yes. So, thank you very much. As Secretary of the IPCC, I am really honored to be with you today. In July, the IPCC completed the 6th assessment cycle, which is known as the most challenging cycle and intense and productive cycle in the history of IPCC, 35 years of the history of IPCC. During this cycle, we had many significant achievements, such as providing more scientifically robust assessments and further focus across different climate dimensions and disciplines, including technology. Throughout the 6th cycle, the IPCC assessed, modeled scenarios and pathways to explore future emission and related impacts and risk. These scenarios covered a range of challenges to climate change, mitigation, and adaptation. To summarize, that's to highlight the urgency. In the very high and high emission scenarios, carbon dioxide emission will roughly double from current levels and lead to a global warming 4.4 degrees Celsius. In the intermediate scenarios, the CO2 emission remain around current level until put up, and it will put us in scenario of 3 degrees C. So we are far from 1.5. And in the low and very low emission scenarios, CO2 emission decline to net zero around 2070 and 2050, followed by varying level of negative CO2 emission, limiting warming to 2 degrees C and 1.5, and this is what is targeted in Paris Agreement. Under all emission scenarios considered, global surface temperature will continue to increase until at least the mid-century. Global warming of 1.5 degrees C and 2 degrees C will be exceeded during the 21st century unless deep reduction in CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions occur in the coming years and decades. These scenarios provide insight into how our choice, including technologies, scientific approach, how our choice today can affect the future of generations to come. And now, more than ever, we have a better understanding of what it is required to make effective and equitable climate action possible, including the deployment of low or zero emission technologies and increase technological efficiency and adoption. As IPCC marks its way into the 7th cycle, we are starting the 7th cycle, which commenced with its inaugural IPCC Bureau meeting, and Ines, is with us this time. You are honoring us as well. In mid-November, there is an opportunity to assess the latest science on the future and what it is necessary for the responsible and ethical deployment of climate action. In about 6 weeks, the chair, the IPCC Bureau, the panel will meet in Istanbul, in Turkey, for the panel 60 session. And this panel will be dedicated to the future of IPCC. And then we will really looking for how we can finalize our program for 7th cycle, including what kind of subject we will deal with. But it should be country-driven. This is what is really making IPCC a little bit special. So we will finalize all the decisions on this cycle, including the tape of reports and material to be developed and rough timeline for their delivery. In closing, I would like to thank the organizer, UNESCO, and all the organizers. So I thank, and also the panelists. I know that the room is rich for excellent panelists, and we are at the critical point in time, and it is that conversation that can really feed the future of IPCC work, and this will help a lot on targeting and on canalizing what is expected by current generation like me and future generation like all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, for highlighting the reality really of the climate science and the urgency of action. And thank you very much. I know that this will be discussed later on during the panel discussions. Thank you very much. We are really honored to have you today. Thank you. So let's go to the last keynote by Koen Verbies, who will present us on sciences and emerging technology for resilience building, UNESCO's perspective. Koen?
All right, if I can get the presentation up, please. Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. I just want to say a few words on the science emerging technologies for resilience building and also how UNESCO approaches this. As you may know, UNESCO supports its member states through its international sciences program, and I just mentioned here those who were mentioned, Man and the Biosphere program, the National Intergovernmental Hydrological program, the International Basic Sciences program, the International Geosciences and Geoparks program, as well as the World Water Assessment program. But also, we work on issues related to local indigenous knowledge, as well as working actively with our UNESCO designated sites, such as the biosphere reserves, geoparks, and the World Heritage sites. Let me just guide you through a few of those examples that you can observe. So as part of the Early Warning for All initiative, UNESCO supports member states on flood and drought early warning and monitoring. For example, we've been working in Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, but also at the regional level to support member states identifying hazards such as floods, droughts, landslides, and see how we can address these challenges together. But also, it was already mentioned in the era of artificial intelligence, and we're of course identifying opportunities for bringing that in disaster risk reduction. For example, to support schools to identify better approaches in case of hazards or disasters such as floods or earthquakes, but also using it in AI chatbots to address challenges during emergencies. But also some work I was involved in related to flooding and how we can use AI to identify locations that are likely to be flooded in the next 24 hours in case of cyclones. But also we talked about open sciences and really mentioned that that's an important new step of the work we're involved in, such as, for example, open learning platforms for people to access learning opportunities. And there's currently in the UNESCO Open Learning Platform more than 35 courses open for enrollment. But also data platforms such as the IHP Water Information Network System that allows capturing data and allows for global assessment of water. But we also involved in citizen science applications such as, for example, in our biosphere reserves in South Africa, working with communities to identify water quality challenges as well as risks that they can mitigate. And new technologies such as Internet of Things that allow us to employ cheaper and lower energy required systems that really help us in locations like Zimbabwe, but also Timor-Leste, Kyrgyzstan, and Ghana to really see how we can facilitate more data collection, which is important for IPCC processes as well. And at the heart of our climate risk assessment, we have a methodology called CRIDA, where we really support member states through a bottom-up approach, where we involve and work with communities to identify their challenges, but also their adaptation options together. And we have a science-based assessment to identify how those adaptation options could mitigate the challenges they are facing in the current and future climate as well. And this methodology has been used so far in more than 22 countries, and we're also in this phase upscaling it to our member states as well. But of course, we also have the indigenous and local knowledge, and we have set up frameworks to work together with knowledge holders and to involve them in co-designing and co-building opportunities for climate services that can help them also to address their challenges. And of course, it involves a whole system of identifying different entry points and opportunities for collaboration, but also ensuring respect for individuals' values and other issues. Certainly that's also a core part of our work. And I already mentioned the UNESCO designated sites, and we have over 780 biodiversity reserves, 195 geoparks, and more than 220 natural world heritage sites. That, of course, is also a rich environment to work and implement activities related to climate resilience building. For example, I'll just highlight two projects. One is in Lake Chad, where we worked with the communities around water challenges, but also around environmental issues, as well as in integrating cultural practices. And a more recent project in Southern Africa in the 15 biodiversity reserves there is to strengthen the role of biodiversity reserve as becoming observatories for climate change and climate change adaptation, and bringing also disaster risk reduction to all the biodiversity reserves in the region. And just to finalize, to highlight that, of course, we have the announcement in the recent UN General Assembly that there is a new international decade for sciences for sustainable development, which will be a driver for all the thematics we just discussed, and especially on open science. And with that, I'll just stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Koen, for highlighting some of those technology we have been using in addressing climate-related challenges. So before handing over to Anil, I would like to really appreciate the participation of our two ADGs, and also Koen, thank you for the contribution, and one round of applause for them. So Anil, you have the floor now to moderate the first part of the panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Abu. My name is Anil from the Water Science Division, Chief of Section Hydrological System, Climate Change and Adaptation. So I would like to immediately, not to lose time, invite our distinguished panelists in the podium. Dr. Yamaguchi Shinobu from the United Nations University, please. Professor Alexander Sigmund from Heidelberg University and UNESCO Chair on Biosphere and Education.
All of that.
All of that. And we have also Ms. Agathe Eugene from French National Center for Scientific Research. The panelists will do PowerPoint presentation, so I will move here. We will have a second panel on the engineering and also ethical dimensions. So we need to really keep our time very short. And the distinguished panelists, as we have been working with United Nations University, UNESCO Chair, and also CNRS on scientific fronts within UNESCO, they are aware of UNESCO's work. So I really would like to directly go to the question. And United Nations University as a United Nations think tank organization, how do you see the science and emerging technologies for resilience building from the United Nations perspective, from the education perspective, as we are education scientific culture organization, what is your key message?
And thank you very much, Chair, and distinguished colleagues and ladies and gentlemen. The first and foremost, I'd like to congratulate UNESCO on putting together this panel on a critical and very timely topic of just transition. Right? And connecting science and technology to just transition. Because United Nations University, the Institute of Advanced Study of Sustainability, we are actually focusing on 4 thematic areas: biodiversity, water resource management, technology and innovation for education, and climate change and governance. We are trying to put those 4 thematic areas together to really promote and advance the just transition. So we are not doing the silo work, but we are trying to make this cutting edge the researchers to really to promote a just transition. So just the recent work that we'd like to share. And first, focusing on research and policy, this April, the United Nations University co-convened the Think 7 Summit in Japan in the context of G8 Summit. And together with the Asian Development Bank Institute, that was really the collection of the academia, trying to promote an influence on just transition. So this really, the core message emerged from this discourse was the importance of climate resilient development through the reigniting action for SDGs altogether and bridging the effort by the G7 and G20 countries, altogether. Okay? And our policy recommendation presented at T7 and G7 have 4 major actions. First, really to deliver the universal access to carbon neutral energy system, and second, to ensure the sustainable food system and biodiversity conversation. Third, to synergize the resilience and social protection. And fourth, most importantly, to enhance the measurement of well-being. So the just transition we consider is a vital cross-cutting principle for all of those 4 recommendations, really to transform to the sustainable, the future. And we actually created the issue paper on the topic of integrated approach for the well-being, environmental sustainability, and just transition. And we did call for the stronger commitment from the government to allocate the budget for the climate finance, but also to mobilize, particularly the private finance, the flows. And we did suggest a greater effort to strengthen the social safety net, particularly for workers in carbon-intensive industries. So really, this is to call for the education sector to provide a continuing lifelong learning opportunities through the reskilling and upskilling for those in the carbon-intensive industries. So this is really a need. There is really a need to establish the people-centered but gender-sensitive monitoring and reporting and evaluation process really for such an action that reflect their complexity. So that's very important. And second, actually we are working with UNESCO on a critical resilience issue, and this year we jointly published the groundbreaking report on how climate change affects human displacement and the right to education in Asian Pacific region. I say groundbreaking because this is the very first report looking at the climate displacement specifically through the lenses of education. So we talked about the right for the science, right to different the people around the world, but the right of displaced people to access and continue their education when the climate disaster forces them to move out of their original places, even to the other countries. In the last 20 years, in fact, the Asian Pacific region had accounted for 80% of human displacement caused by the climate change. So this is definitely an urgent issue that we can no longer ignore in our report. So we made sure that that can really happen. So just last point, the United Nations University, from the education capacity building perspectives, we're very happy to share that this year that we launched a new postgraduate program specializing in the Paris Agreement. So we are very much committed to empower the younger generation to be the change agent through this specialized postgraduate, both master and doctor, for the policy-oriented to promote the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yamaguchi Shinobu, Director of United Nations University. In fact, this is the second time in a row we are delivering as our joint effort with United Nations University. There are some ongoing projects we need to work together. I would like to move on now. I want to move on to UNESCO Chair on Observation and Education of World Heritage and Biosphere Reserve at Heidelberg University of Education, with whom we are collaborating to prepare an educational atlas for the youth. So, Alexander, please in 5 minutes, if you can give your reflection.
Thanks, Anil, for inviting me. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you. So according to the recent UNESCO program, ESD, towards achieving the Agenda 2030, ESD, or education, is a key enabler for a sustainable future. And if we want to take that serious, we have also to address that to climate change. And so my dream is that all students around the world, from China to Brazil, from Mexico to South Africa, get a comprehensive inside view on recent science on climate change mitigation and adaptation, because there's no climate change mitigation and adaptation which is different in Australia from Mexico. So we have recent knowledge from the scientific level. And the idea is to make a comprehensive and adapted to the needs of the classroom, of the teachers and the students, in a modern way, atlas, a climate change educational atlas for all young people around the world. And the idea is to produce it in different languages, and on the first step to deliver it to all 13,000 UNESCO project schools around the world for free, because education should not be limited to financial aspects, so all should have the possibility to get access to this, to the recent status of research. And the idea is not just to deliver knowledge. The idea is to have three perspectives. So the perspective back, we want to look to the last 100 years. So how have climate already changed? And what does it cause in different regional cases? The idea to showcase that is to use satellite images, but also graphs and modern ways of science communication to address the interest and the motivation, and to foster the competence of young people to see, okay, there is already a change. It's not just a number on the IPCC report, it's something that has changed the world already until now. So this is a perspective to the back. The recent perspective we want to use according to different spheres, so the pedosphere, the biosphere, the hydrosphere, and different climate zones according to a climate map that I have produced in the last years. Different case studies around the world, from the polar regions to the tropics, from the subtropical deserts to the mid-latitudes, to showcase on the regional level, okay, this is the status of today, but we want not stop on that level, we want to show solutions. Because to motivate young people, it's necessary not to say, okay, this is a catastrophe, just wait, it will get worse. Do something. So getting from climate knowledge to climate action. And that's why these case studies always produced on a double page in this atlas with much of photos and much of self-explaining imageries. We want to give them the key for solutions. Solutions to mitigate to climate change, but also to adapt to climate change, because mitigation and adaptation are the two sides of the same coin at the end. And that's what we are going to do, and that's what we are here. And tomorrow the atlas and the concept will be presented and explained more extensive than today. That's for the moment for me. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alexander Sigmund. And I just want to compliment that this atlas with the scientific analysis, we are going to present tomorrow in the Green Education Hub. And we will have also video. Please come to the Education Hub for that. But also, you mentioned about scientific assessment, climate scenarios, and we talk about climate uncertainty. And we talk about the climate risk-informed decision analysis. So UNESCO proposed science-based assessment as a game changer. And taking the opportunity, I would like to invite all of you to this evening, 6 p.m. with IPCC. We are organizing in IPCC WMO panel if you are interested. Let's move on the same topic. Now, We have Ms. Agatha Yuzin from French National Center for Scientific Research, and you will talk about One at Water initiative.
Yeah, so thank you for the invitation, and thank you, UNESCO, to invite me on this session. So, as you know, water is life, and water is everywhere. But with climate change and global change, natural and anthropogenic pressures on water resources are exacerbated. Then, now the global is catching up the local, and we have to do something. We have new questions are emerging. So we have to, these challenges must be addressed by more integrated, systemic, multi-stakeholder approaches to co-construct solutions adapt to contrasting realities. We carry out research, and together, let's go to action. That is what we try to do with this research, French National Research Program, which is the name One Water, Au Bien Commun. This program shifts the paradigm by placing water as a common good, a central element of socio-ecosystem prone to climate and anthropogenic forcing. That is a real opportunity for developing new research and innovation and strengthening sustainable sciences and to aim this challenge. One Water is a national research and innovation program to accelerate transitions, measure impacts on hydroclimatics and socio-hydrosystems. And we are organizing 6 big challenges. So very quickly, we have to anticipate. To understand the hydroclimatic evolutions. We have to have better information regarding water footprint, and we have to cross availability and quality, quantity and quality. Water as a sentinel, just to have the perception and to measure the evolution of the health of people and the environment. We have some solution on response regarding the singularity of each territories, and we have to evaluate each solutions. We also support the socio-ecological transition and involve all of the stakeholders in the same question. And then we will, of course, develop some data, and we will share, make accessible and understandable by all the water data that we produce, and all of people need to develop the governance. That is an innovative and structuring research to strengthen interdisciplinarity and multiple stakeholder dialogues thanks to different tools, as you can see there. And I just want to focus on education. Education through research, and mainly with women, of course, because they are our generation, and we need to have some new scientists or new people who have this knowledge to be able to develop policies. It is our responsibility also in this program. So this is a real opportunity, and we are very lucky to have this program. It's part of the French investment plan for the future, and it makes it possible to finance a national research and innovative program with a budget of 53 million over 10 years. And then we will be able to strengthen interdisciplinary and multi-stakeholder dialogues to bridge the gap between science and policy and society, to support member states in developing robust adaptation and attenuation policies by hydroclimatic impacts and more globally global change, to support UNESCO approach of just transition, and to accelerate transition, measure impacts on socio-hydrosystem. That is an opportunity to respond to current and future challenges on recognizing continental fresh water as a common good. This program to better understand and innovate for a viable, fair, and sustainable water management. Thank you.
Thank you, Agathe. I was listening your presentation, but I thought without even looking at IHP 9 strategy, which is, we have the IHP Intergovernmental Hydrological Program strategy, Science for a Water Secure World, I think 70% of what we are supposed to do, you are doing. So we should work together.
Sure. I hope so.
Yeah, because climate change, adaptation, solution, resiliency, socio-ecology, and particularly in the context of uncertainty, how to adapt. This methodology that Kuhn presented earlier, climate risk-informed decision analysis. So I think there are lots of opportunity for cooperation. We have some time for the audience to interact with us. So I would like to open the floor. Please identify yourself. Adele, and colleagues, if you can pass the microphone. And identify, and question is open to any of the panelists, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sheila Agarao from the Philippines. I'm working with organizations of persons with disabilities. Thank you so much for the wonderful information you've shared to us about open science and the emergent technologies in terms of climate engineering and climate action. I just would like to ask, can you give us like a concrete examples of how you've been including persons with disabilities in terms of their accessibility requirements for the learning platforms that you mentioned earlier, and also on climate education, and also how are you incorporating accessibility and universal design in the emerging technologies for climate engineering and climate action? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have noted a question. I will take a couple of others before I give the floor to panelists and also from my colleagues. If there are any further questions. Okay, I don't see any hand raised. Of course, open science and engineering and technology, we have open science platform. The question that you raised about access to disabilities, I think this is some of the things that we have to consider. But if anyone in the panel would like to provide any insight into that, Alexander, you want to come in?
I can say something on that. It's a very important question to involve all people, all with different needs. And in a broader sense of that meaning, we, especially on that atlas that we are planning, this climate change education atlas, we want to make it inclusive. That means for different needs on different level of knowledge, because not all pupils are the same. All will get different, let's say, stages of introduction on climate change mitigation, adaptation. But it's good that you raised the question. We should also think about how to make it available, maybe a digital way, to people with different disabilities, to make it accessible to an even wider range of pupils. Maybe the atlas itself, it's a printed thing, is limited somehow, but maybe in addition on a digital way we can make it more accessible according to different color codes and things like that to other disabilities.
Thank you. In UNU, do you have any?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you very much for your very important question. And in fact, I mentioned about this people-centered, gender-sensitive, and inclusive monitoring report and evaluation process for the climate actions. And in fact, we have been working with the government, and we have case studies that you have been very much concentrating on developing those inclusive and gender-sensitive the monitoring and evaluation process. So I am able to share it with you, definitely. And also for the net zero processes, we are now developing the e-learning, the platform, which can be very accessible and to all the learners who are interested. So that could be another the examples we're going to share. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Kun, if you can highlight about Open Science Platform.
Right. And also just want to give an example of the work we were doing with the science, the social sciences sector actually in Zimbabwe and Mozambique when we had this major event and really working with them to identify ways that people with disabilities could access information better because of lots of opportunities also are there, like when there is a disaster, there is really a challenge of getting to information. And this is also a way where UNESCO has been supporting and making sure that they interact with those people.
Okay, I got, yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. Just so we have to go from science to action, and then we have to shift how to do science, and to integrate and to consider the measure, but also empirical knowledge. It's a whole, and I think that with sustainable sciences, we will be able to get involved all of the people just to identify the good questions which are adapted to the population and which are very important for the academics also, just to be able to have the knowledge and to understand the evolution of the air system, for example. And then it's one of the aims of this program, and that's why we develop a think tank and we integrate all of the people and stakeholders just to be able to confront science, knowledge, and territories' reality, just to be sure that our knowledge will be appropriate and that we will be able to transform and to do this transition that we have to do. So it's one of the examples.
Thank you so much. You know, in this session, we try to highlight the resilience building. Of course, in the next panel, we'll talk about emerging technologies. So we, as we have heard from IPCC also, we are going to overshoot 1.5 degree. The adaptation, mitigation measures that we are going to do is not sufficient. We need to build resiliency. So in the hydrological community, we call stationarity is dead. Past is no longer relevant to future. We need to really adapt to the future generation. So with that, if you have a 30-second keywords before we close the session, and I invite ADG Gabriela Ramos to run the show. I will start with Alexander. So let's have your key message to the audience.
My key message would be attract young people for climate change, mitigation and adaptation, but because that will be the future generation which will mostly facing the climate change aspect, so there will be maybe most of the solution. As we see with the different COPs, we are struggling with making the right decisions as being the adults. Hopefully the future generation will make it better.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And actually what we're doing with our water resource management team is really to decentralize the research, the system, and also local implementation. When we talk about the sustainable, the water resource, the system, really reviewing what is available as a resource, finance the people and the local technology really to integrate until they're sustainable, the management of the water resources.
Thank you so much. Agathe?
So we have to better understand and innovate to achieve viable, equitable, and sustainable water management.
Thank you so much. With that, let's give a big round of applause to our panelists. And I would like to invite Ms. Gabriela Ramos, Assistant Director General for Social and Human Sciences.
Thank you.
And then I want to invite, please, Ines, and please shake. Impressive, Anil, impressive. The timing is just amazing how it's being managed. We will have also 30 minutes with the second part of this panel, which is related to climate engineering. Sheikh, you can come here, and then the three of us are together. Here, for nice pictures. And let me tell you, I'm joined by Inés Camiloni, as we introduced at the beginning, professor, University of Buenos Aires, and member. We are very proud that she is a member of the World Commission of UNESCO on the Ethics of Scientific Knowledge and Technology, and vice chair of the IPCC Working Group 1. And actually, she's the one with the Schneiweiss who produced the report that we released end of November on the ethics of climate engineering. Yes. Great to have you here. I know you have been in high demand, which is great. And then we have with us Sheikh Diane Silla, former Director of Ministerial Cabinet for Environment and Sustainable Development of Senegal, and an all-warrior of climate and climate transition. Thank you so much for being here. So let's just move very fast to the substance, and I will start by asking Inés that she can explain to you these technologies that are more at the forefront of the discussion on climate engineering. Of course, carbon dioxide removal, no, the CDR, or solar radiation modification as SRM, which are the main techniques, no, that are there mentioned in the circuits. And can you give us a little bit of an overview of these technologies and then their implications for climate action, please, Inés?
Okay. Well, thank you, Gabriela. Thank you for having me here. And in the report, we explored two different climate engineering techniques. Carbon dioxide removal is one of these technologies, and solar radiation modification that we usually use SRM to simplify the wording of for the other technology. And carbon dioxide removal, or CDR, aims to alter the climate by removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and to store it in some reservoirs in the soils, ocean, or even in terrestrial reservoirs. And these CDR techniques include direct air capture and storage, also land use management, including bioenergy with carbon capture, also increasing the uptake of CO2 from the atmosphere by the ocean, for example, by fertilization with iron, and also enhancing natural weathering processes that remove CO2 also from the atmosphere. So when considering CDR technologies, there are two main different methods. One of them has the objective to improve the natural storage of CO2 in the climate system, and the other one, the other group of technologies include technological improvements that they are not really available at the scale needed to really remove the amount of CO2 that we need to keep the climate system in a safe level. And the other group of technologies, solar radiation modification, in fact is an umbrella of different technologies that include, for example, to make the marine clouds more white, bright, to reflect the large amount of the incoming solar radiation back to the space. And the other technologies are, for example, to make the surface more reflective, also to send back to the space more of the incoming solar radiation. And the other technology is to include into the lower stratosphere small particles that we call aerosols, with the same objective to reflect back to the space large amounts of solar radiation in a way to mimic the effect of a volcanic eruption. You know that when there is a volcanic eruption and we have these small aerosols into the stratosphere, the global temperature reduces. For example, when we have the volcanic eruption of the Mount Pinatubo in Philippines in 1991, the global temperature reduced by 0.5 degrees for many months after the eruption. So the idea of this technology in some ways to mimic this effect introducing these particles into the stratosphere.
Thank you so much, Ines, and thank you for your service, because really you have been working with the COMEST to advance this report. I think that it was informing the discussions that we are having here in COP28. We have been requested for a lot of information, and this report provides, first, very good knowledge. Ines put all of the description of this technological progress that needs to be well understood, but then all of the ethical questions, and we will come back to that in a minute. In the meantime, I would like to bring you over to the discussion, because you have been for quite some time, as I said, engaged in the climate discussions and the negotiations. And we are always picturing out the trends, the solutions, the issues, the political hurdles. And therefore, how would you imagine that there could be an integration of this debate on climate engineering in an already very complex climate negotiations? How you see this integrating into the debate?
Thank you very much, Gabriela Ramos, for the opportunity, and UNESCO too. And I think I will respond to the question to take the example of Africa, because we study in 2020-22, and we had 2 workshops on this SRM. And as Africa is concerned that the focus on negotiating a governance system for this emerging SRM technology will take time and potentially further divert political will and resources away from obligation to implement and finance proven policies, technology, and measures under the UNFC framework, because we see UNFC is like a forum, and if you see this village, that is very, very difficult to push things, subject like SRM very quicker. And Africa also is further concerned that the SRM technology, in terms of the current status of knowledge, will have potentially severe transboundary impact and implication across multiple sectors and areas of legal jurisdiction. Given the global and transboundary nature, as precautionary measure, it is very important to be considered by relevant mandated bodies within the UN system involving, first of all, in Africa, we involve the African Ministerial Conference on Environment at scientific, technical, political, and legal level. And while recognizing the importance of international control to prevent unilateral advancement of SRM technology, Africa also is not yet ready to support any engagement in possible broader international governance matters related to this technology, given the above-mentioned limited level of understanding, and considering that existing bodies within the UN system have the mandate to address any immediate geoengineering concerns that may arise. And finally, the African Group of Negotiators of Climate is trying now to develop further consideration and report to the Ministerial Conference of Africa for decision making. And now, in the light of all this concern and high degree of uncertainty around this technology, Africa should not support their application at this stage, but should rather support the development of an authoritative scientific synthesis and review of the state of knowledge of these technologies. These scientific assessments should be conducted by a mandated body such as IPCC, UNESCO, or any other entity, or together as a scientific, technical, and ethic committee. And in this, inclusiveness is very key to make sure that everybody is on board.
Thank you so much. That's a very interesting work in Africa. The Overshoot Committee of the Paris Agreement, led by Pascal Lamy, also produced a report on these technologies, and they concluded that there should be a moratorium. In your report, there is this question even of how do we do we advance even the research on these technologies and how much this can lead to what you call the slippery slope? So maybe before going into the public, if they have questions about it, I would like you to touch upon also, Ines, on what were the framing of this analysis in terms of what would be the conditions to possibly consider deploying or not these technologies. What were the main conclusions of the report?
The conclusions are that we need to make much more progress on science about these climate intervention techniques before deciding the deployment of this. And this includes the need of more research, also a discussion on the governance of research, because we have different types of research. We have indoor research, and this refers to climate modeling and to social science research also related to these technologies. And we also considered different outdoor experiments related to these technologies and the governance of this outdoor research. And in this sense, our conclusion or recommendations were related that when considering deployment of these technologies or even outdoor research, we must consider, for example, if there will be some transboundary effect, and in that sense is that maybe a moratorium is something that we can recommend in the same way as the Climate Overshoot Commission you already mentioned. But when we explored the potential benefits and risks of this technology in the sense of using climate models, these are in the umbrella of academic freedom, and in this sense maybe just a code of conduct would be enough at this stage.
And what about all this ethical framework? Because of course you were invited to support the development of the report because of your knowledge of the scientific elements. What did you learn about the ethical framework?
I learned a lot because it was a multidisciplinary commission. So it was really a hard work, but a very interesting work. And what we learned is that for this type of climate intervention, ethics is at the center of the discussion. And at the stage we start working on this, it was not really something that was being considered enough in the climate intervention conversations. And also, as is a technology that is mostly centered in the global north, all research, the need to involve the global south in this conversation. And this is also referred to the ethics when we are talking about technologies that had the possibility to alter the whole climate system, not just a region, in a way that could benefit some regions and could increase risk for other regions. And that's why ethics is at the center of any conversation about the potential deployment of them.
And then the question of governance, because the point is if we are to consider these options, who takes the decision of when and how, and so it's quite a difficult question, and that's why I want to ask you, Sheikh, what are the next steps to strengthen the governance of these, even of these discussions that I don't think that are happening in an inclusive or visible way?
Yes, we try in, first of all, in UNEA, I think previous UNEA 4, I think, we introduced this matter, but we don't succeed, many resistance, and we don't know why. And if you have something on science based, you don't need to have some resistance. It's like I give sometimes the example, you go to the supermarket, you see a bottle, there is no mention, any characteristic, and you want to buy it. Nobody will buy it. We need to know, and it's why the science-based and the inclusiveness is very important. But now I think that with Switzerland and Senegal and Monaco, we are trying to introduce a resolution in this coming UNU-IAS 6 to invite some way forward on research, on to compile what is existing and to develop a report so that everybody is aware and we can collectively decide. I hope that this can succeed and we have the progress on this matter. Otherwise, some countries are starting now to develop this SRM, and it's not very fair to others because of the transboundary nature of the technologies.
That's, I think, a very important point, the question of who wins, who loses, what's the distributional impact, and I think that the more recent experience that we have on international cooperation on science and scientific endeavors was COVID, where cooperation was amazingly well organized, but then the distribution of the benefits were not. And therefore, I think this is one of those questions. Do we have any comment or question from the public? Take advantage of having these amazing experts here. I will give you the floor next to that one, Anil.
Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. My name is UNU-IAS. I'm part of the UCAN network, and I'm the regional focal point of the UNU-IAS presidency to the Children Youth Measure Group. And indeed, we have seen the submission on the solar radiation management, but I was curious about what are the other consequences that it can be causing other than decreasing the CO2 on the atmosphere. Would it be causing adverse consequences on the ocean and land biodiversity? And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ines?
There can be negative effects related to these technologies, but also some benefits. And one of the things that why research is so important is that we really don't know too much to decide if this is a good or a bad idea, the deployment of, in particular, solar radiation modification. CDR are already considered in most of the IPCC scenarios, for example, even when the technology is not available, the scale needed to reduce the amount of CO2 that are really needed. But we need more research. We need more research from different sectors and in different regions to have an answer to these questions. We know that there can be some benefits, a reduce of global temperature, reduce of extreme events, mostly related to temperature, but also some changes in the rainfall patterns, and this means that in some regions rainfall could increase and in some other regions it could decrease, and this will obviously impact biodiversity and food production and water availability in many regions. But we need really much more research in many countries to answer that question.
But you also include in the report, Ines, the question of I would like you to share with the public this question of imagining we deploy the technologies that needs to be scaled, the solar radiation modification, and then what happens if suddenly you need to cut it off, or this I think was very well explained in the report, and this is interesting. But the other part, which is that it could also be used as a weapon. So there are some other areas that are even not linked to the climate, but that can also be quite risky. So
one of the potential effects of the deployment of these technologies is if there is a sudden stop of using it, what is called the termination shock, and if the deployment of the technologies is not at the same pace that we are reducing the emissions of CO2, the sudden stop of introducing these particles into the stratosphere could produce a sudden increase in temperature with many dangerous effects in many regions. This is why what people is thinking about these technologies, that it could be used in some way to buy time at the same time that we are reducing the emissions of CO2. This is not presented as a solution for climate change, but something that can help us to avoid the worst effect of climate change when we are not reducing the emissions of CO2 as we should be doing. And the other question is, if this could be used as a weapon, I cannot answer that yet, but this is why governance is so important, because it's a technology that is not really very expensive, and in this sense it could be used by a single country or by a company, and this is why when we have a technology that could alter the whole climate system with these asymmetries, this is why it's so important to have a governance system that could be discussed at the same time that as the technology is being developed.
So too many questions unanswered, but I think that the fact is that at least we have this very important deliverable from COMEST to frame the discussion. Anil?
Very interesting session indeed. Coming from a science background, and particularly as a hydrologist, where we consider water as a hyper-local phenomena, using this intervention in the climate system in some of the country which may be up mountain countries, climate victim countries, or SIDS countries because of sea level rise. This uncertainty with the technology, and this is partly you have answered, it's not the full solution, because scientists want to see what are the scenarios, how it will be intervened. And one of the things I also want to refer, we looked at water role in mitigation, and some of the mitigation measures require even intense water. So whether this technology might even create some other scarcity that we don't foresee. So there are many uncertainties that I see, but of course, this cannot provide the solution for the climate change, global warming, but I think there are, for the local issues, how we can really take into the consideration we don't have additional side effects, if you like.
What we are doing related to water, for example, we are using climate simulations, including this type of climate intervention, solar radiation modification, in the sense of introducing these small particles into the stratosphere. That is the only technology that could alter the whole climate system. It's different than the other ones I already mentioned. And we are using these climate simulations with hydrologic models just to answer these kind of questions. What could happen with water availability or changes in river discharges in different basins in the world. And with that, at least you can have some information about what you can expect if this technology is finally deployed, and if things could go worse or not, or even if you can adapt to the potential changes that you can expect related to this, but always in comparison with the risk you already have associated to climate change. We are not comparing the potential impacts, benefits, or risks of this technology compared to an ideal world. We are comparing if this will have benefits or risks compared to a world with climate change, with increasing amount of CO2 into the atmosphere. And in these ways that when you can make a decision about if this is a good or bad idea at the end.
And I think that's the point, and I want to bring Sila for this very specific question, because we are not considering these technological developments in the abstract. Mm-hmm. In the abstract, it's not an academic exercise. Of course, it can be fascinating. We are considering in the context of combating climate change. In your view, they are part of the policy mix? You think that, I mean, I know that Africa has said not not now, but do you consider that they should be also part of the policy solutions, or?
Yes, that can be part of the policy solution, but we need to base all this on science and knowledge, and to make sure that we don't have we have on hand the impact, and will not create any further difficulty, because human being is always creating further difficulty to sort out the further difficulty. It's, any convention you take, you get the Vienna Convention, Montreal Protocol, we invite these guys, we want to face down, we change, we face down. And this one, sometimes we need to have the knowledge before engaging to some type of technologies.
Last question, we have 4 minutes to go.
Just a general question. I like the ideas of climate engineering, but I have some doubts if we are not shifting the focus on the wrong direction. So for me, to make it in a picture, it's to say, okay, let the patients become ill, we work on the drugs. Wouldn't it be better to keep all the focus on the prevention of more climate change and to focus on that, not to look for excuses? Okay, we have some technical problems, but we find other technical things to get rid of them. I don't know if it would be better to keep on the deadlines and all the pressure you need to build a diamond to prevent climate change. General question.
Let me link that question with the closing of the panel, because the fact is that this is my main concern. My main concern is that the techno-optimist would say, quite worried. I mean, if science is moving so fast, don't you worry, we will fix it. And I think that this is, and the call of the report and the comments and UNESCO is not to focus on that. Actually, the call is to avoid this to be used as an excuse not to go for, and it was very clear. Mm-hmm. You go for mitigation, you go for your commitments, and then maybe someday, whenever we have. So why don't we close the session by you telling us what you are asking UNESCO in the report to do, because this conversation has just started, and then also 1 minute for you to also say how we can help from UNESCO. You know UNESCO well, so over to our two speakers.
Thank you. And in some way to answer your question, in the report we are saying that the priority must be mitigation and adaptation, but climate intervention is already out there, and some countries are working fast around this. So we must talk about what is out there, and the idea is to talk about the ethics on these climate intervention technologies. And this is why in our recommendations for UNESCO, we are including 2 points, one related to education, the role of UNESCO in education about not only climate action and climate change, but also on the ethics of climate engineering, because the conversation about these technologies is really increasing around the world in an asymmetric way. This is why we want, in particular, the Global South also to be part of this conversation, and UNESCO has a significant role in this, and also awareness, because any decision about this needs the public knowledge about the technology, the potential risks, and also potential benefits. And we also think that UNESCO has a very key role in promoting these conversations.
Thank you. Jake?
Yes, I already indicated in my presentation that we need a mandated body like IPCC and UNESCO and others, and all together, and it's likely that UNESCO have very key role to play, and I hope that this key role is based on precaution, ethic, inclusiveness, and science-based. Thank you.
That's amazing, because Sheikh Silas has just referred to the ethical framework, the precautionary principle, the inclusiveness, science, and be conscious about these developments. So it's really a pleasure to be working with both of you, to have you in this panel. We will continue with this conversation because, as you say, it's not over, but it's there. And therefore, UNESCO and the social and human science sector will be organizing some debates. First, as Ines mentioned, to raise awareness, to make it more visible, because it's there, it's at hand. And second, to make sure that whatever governance need to be developed, we are well prepared for the purpose. So thank you so much for being here. And 00, my God,
Yeah,
we were good, huh?
Very good.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can we have a picture? Let us have a picture. Come for the picture, the speakers.